G'day everyone, welcome back to another video on the channel. So last week's video I went over and graded every AFL club's 2023 AFL draft performance, and the most natural and the most expected reaction from that video is, quite understandably, you can't give the true gradings to clubs and to players until we actually see them play in an AFL system or for an AFL club, and you've got to give it a few years to see how they go. So I thought I'd implement that practice in this video today, and considering that the 2018 draft was 5 years ago now, let's go over every AFL club's draft performance from that draft year and see how they went, and I will be grading every AFL club's draft performance in this video today. Alongside the national draft, we'll also go over the club's other selections from that 2018 off-season period, including the rookie draft, pre-season supplementary selection period, and of course the 𝐓𝐿 rookies. Because let's be honest, usually when you see draft content right after an AFL draft, like reviews and gradings, this is always usually the reaction, so I thought this would be a cool idea to do it in this video today. So feel free to leave a like and subscribe if you do go on to enjoy, and let's get stuck in. So we kick things off in alphabetical order with the Adelaide Crows, as we always like to do. They had a very highly rated draft from this year, given that not only at the time they picked up two good-looking prospects in the first round, they were also able to trade out their pick 19 and get Carlton's future first in that infamous live trade as the Blues went on to take 𝐼𝐻𝐿𝐿 𝐎𝐿𝐿. But the first two selections, Chase Jones and Ned McHenry, still on the list, but still... Look, they're not world beaters, but they're definitely important role players, and I think Chase Jones's year was quite good in 2023. They also took 𝐼𝐻𝐿𝐿 and 𝘧𝐿𝐼𝐻𝐿𝐿, two players that are still on the list later in the draft, and then Kieran Strachan, he is their backup ruckman still today. Paul Hunter, and then Jordan Butts, a great pickup there, probably around their second or third best key defender. So when you look at it here, almost every player is still on the list, and when we see the rest of the clubs, it is pretty impressive that Adelaide have been able to retain all these players from just one draft. So I'm going to be giving them a solid B grade. I feel like that is, yeah, pretty justified. These are all really good role players. I obviously re-rookied 𝐼𝐻𝐿𝐿 at the end of this year, but 𝘧𝐿𝐼𝐻𝐿𝐿, you know, McHenry and Jones are still young. I think they've still got potential, but they're not absolute world beaters, so I think a B grade for the Crows is fair enough. Next team up we have is the Brisbane Lions. They had an A grade back in 2018. It was a highly rated draft prop at the time. They were able to take some, or pick up some good looking plays, and also Connor McFadden they were able to get with that academy selection. Noah Ainsworth is still on the list today with 55 games, and then looking at the rookie selections, Ryan Bastanak, they were able to pick him up. Jacob Allison, Tom Fullerton just left to Melbourne, but he was playing as sort of that backup ruck forward in the VFL the past few seasons, and James Madden, the Irishman, still on the list today. So look, pretty poor draft in the end now when we look at it from the Lions. This was their bottom four season. Then the next year they jumped into the top four. So not really the greatest draft from them. Pretty much the only really good player is Noah Ainsworth, even though he didn't really play many games from 2023. So he's still looking to get back into the best 22. So got to be giving Brisbane a D grade here. Eli Smith was highly rated. Same with Connor McFadden. This is why the Lions draft was rated so well, because they're able to pick up a few steals at the time, but they just haven't turned out to be good quality players. So yeah, D grade for the Lions. The Blues draft in 2018 was a pretty memorable one, no matter what sort of supporter you were. Not only that they were able to pick up Sam Walsh, but they did partake in now that really poorly aged live trade of giving away their future first to Adelaide to pick up Liam Stocker, who is now obviously at the Saints. But Sam Walsh, an absolute superstar. He was the best player, of course, from that draft pool. Last few seasons, he's had his injury woes, but I think next year he can really get back to his 2021 best, perhaps. Finbarr O'Dwyer and Ben Sylvain, they took later in the draft. They're no longer on the list. Tommy Bugg as well retired straight away after getting picked up by the Blues. But how about this? This is why I wanted to include the latest selections. Look at a few of these players. Matt Owies came across, of course, from basketball as a 𝐓𝐿𝐿 rookie. He's played almost 50 games now as that pressure forward. And Matty Cottrell had a great 2023 season for the Blues along the wing. He was picked up in the pre-season supplementary selection period. And Michael Gibbons as well. He had a bit of an impact in the early 2020s for the Blues too. So I'm going to be giving the Blues a B+. I still think Sam Walsh has that potential to get back to his 2021 best. So you could almost give the Blues an A. Probably could give them an A back in 2021, but now we're starting to see the fruits of a few of these later selections like Owies and Cottrell. So a pretty decent draft from the Blues, but still it is hard to go past that Liam Stocker blunder of a live trade, but still a good one from the Blues, B+. We move on now to Collingwood's draft crop, and it is headlined with 𝐼𝐴𝐴𝐿 𝐷𝐿𝐷 with the Pies picking him up at pick 13. He was a Next Generation Academy member for Collingwood, and he was picked up early in that first round, and what a player he's become now. Massive breakout season 2023 as one of probably now almost the competition's premier lockdown defenders that can also intercept really well. Will Kelly got delisted at the end of this year from the Pies, the father-son at pick 29. 𝐵𝐵𝐴𝐿 𝐷𝐿𝐷 didn't really get much time at Collingwood, eventually moving on to North Melbourne and now delisted. Tim Broomhead was downgraded onto the rookie list and only played 2 games onwards. And also Mark Keane played a few games for the Pies and now at the Crows. So, look, I think this is a little bit... I'm going to be a little bit lenient here. I feel like you could probably give Collingwood a bit... maybe like a C+ or just in the B, but I'm going to be giving them a B because of the impact that 𝐼𝐴𝐴𝐿 𝐷𝐿𝐷 had this year on their premiership run. A really good pickup, and he's just going to be such an important player now in a potential dynasty for the Magpies. Who knows? But yeah, really important play, 𝐼𝐴𝐿 for Collingwood. I'm going to be giving the Pies a B grade. Essendon didn't really have many selections in the 2018 draft because they were part of that massive Dylan Shield trade. So with their first selection, they picked up the excitement machine of Irving Mosquito. He had a few nice glimpses for the Dons as that electrifying Aboriginal forward, but just really couldn't keep out on the park consistently, had to retire, unfortunately, due to injuries. Brayden Ham was a really good selection late in the draft. He obviously did get delisted at the end of last year, I'm pretty sure, as a bit of like an inside midfielder, pressure forward type. Tom Jock obviously played that one game there, Sudanese kid, but just wasn't good enough, eventually getting delisted in his first season. And also Zach Clark, the former Fremantle ruckman, had a few games for the Dons as a pre-season supplementary selection period pickup. So yeah, when we look at it now, obviously with not the greatest draft capital, that can mean it doesn't really turn out to be too great. Brayden Ham, obviously really the best player they took from that draft, but no one's on the list anymore from this 2018 draft crop, so it just has to be a flat D grade for the Dons from this draft. We move on now to the Fremantle Dockers, and with their first selection, they picked up Sam Sturt, a really highly rated player in his draft year, athletic, marking forward, and hasn't really been able to hit his full potential at the Dockers. But hey, his 2023 season looked promising. He kicked more goals than playing games. I think it was like 17 goals from 14 games, something around that mark, but had a nice season. So does he now start to really get going for the Dockers? And with, especially when you look at it here, 𝘧𝐼𝐿𝐷𝐿𝐷 now departing the club, is it a chance now for Sturt to really get going? But yeah, 𝐬𝐿𝐷𝐿𝐷 was a really good pickup at 57, but now when we look at it in a retrospective format, it's almost irrelevant because now he's off to the Magpies, but they do get a bit of draft capital for him, so almost we have to look again in the future on who they take from that 𝘧𝐼𝐿𝐷𝐿𝐷 compensation. But yeah, really underrated player for the Dockers, so still kudos to them for picking him up all the way at pick 57. Luke Valenti as well, he had to retire, I'm pretty sure, due to injury, unfortunately, but he looked like a bit of a talent. They downgraded Ethan Hughes to the rookie list, and the latest selections in the draft containing players that are no longer on the list. So for the Dockers, I'm going to be giving them a C-. I would like to give them a higher grade because of that 𝘧𝐼𝐿𝐷𝐿𝐷 pickup, but now when we look at it at the time of recording this video, doesn't play for the Dockers anymore. So yeah, I mean, I still want to give them credit for that good trade, but apart from that, not really looking like the greatest draft. Sturt's still a bit of an unknown type. Hughes not really contributing to this draft crop because he just simply got downgraded to a rookie. So C- it is for the Dockers. Geelong's 2018 draft reminds me a little bit of their draft from this year. A lot of selections in the 50s and 60s, but when we do look at it here, didn't really pay off too much. Jordan Clark, a well-rated general defender, probably one of the best ones from the draft crop, but eventually did want to leave Geelong to go back home. But yeah, didn't really get the best out of him, let's be honest. At the time, they also picked up mature age ruckman Darcy Fort, and he was, of course, part of that trade to Brisbane, so he's off the list. Oscar Brownless, another one of those ones you could probably take note of. The son, of course, of Billy Brownless, but couldn't play game, now off the list. But when you think this hasn't really looked like the greatest draft crop from the Cats, look at their rookie selection. Tom Atkins, an absolute beauty of a selection. He was picked up as a 23-year-old, and look at him go. He was massive in their premiership campaign in 2022, becoming a really underrated inside midfielder, diligent, hard-working, tough-as-nails style of midfielder, and over 100 games for the Catters as a rookie-listed player. So because of that, that definitely bumps up the Cats grade a bit, and I'll be giving them a C grade from their 2018 draft crop. It was 100% expected that Gold Coast would be boasting one of the most exciting draft hauls from this 2018 pool, given the amount of top 10 selections they did have, and they took 𝐓𝐴𝐴𝐴, 𝐼𝐴𝐴𝐴𝐴 𝐸𝐴𝐴𝐴 and Ben King with those picks respectively. Another one to look at is definitely Caleb Graham. He's one of the more depth players for the Suns on their list these days, but hey, pick 71, a really good pickup. He's also played 37 games. 𝗏𝐼𝐴𝐴𝐿𝐼, another one to obviously take note of. The Suns legend, he was demoted onto the rookie list as more of that mentor type of role, and a few other players that are now no longer on the list. But the main looking point, of course, is the 3 selections in the top 10. This was the 3 that would really shape their future. And now when we look at their list, Izak Rankine did leave to the Crows. A bit of a gaping hole in their list in that small forward area. But Nick Holman, Joel Jeffrey, of course, Malcolm Roses had a few nice breakout performances from this year. 𝐓𝐴𝐴𝐴𝐴 is the big one. He's been a little bit... a bit of a question mark on what is his true role, but I think now as that third tall forward, he's found his home. He kicked, I think, over 35 goals this year. Also a lovely kick of the football. And Ben King's been a little bit on and off with injury, but I think now with 𝗏𝐼𝐴𝐴𝐴 at the door, him paired up with Jed Walters come through from this latest draft, I think he could really go off next year. So I'll be giving the Suns a B+. Still a question mark on, are these players able to hit their full potential, 𝐓𝐴𝐴𝐴𝐴 and King respectively? But they're in a good spot, I think, the Suns. So again, you could probably grade this one from next year. Should they make finals? Should 𝐓𝐴𝐴𝐴𝐴 and King have a big season? You could give them an A grade. But I think these are promising plays they still have on their list. So B+ it is for the Suns. The GWS Giants have one of the more entertaining draft hauls to look at when we do look at it now in a retrospective format. Their first round selections, not really too great. Jai Caldwell, Jackson Hately, both left the club. Now, Caldwell was the player they took from the pick they did get from Dylan Shield, and Caldwell goes to Essendon, so Essendon really win that in the end. But yeah, then Jackson Hately did leave to the Crows only after a few seasons. Underrated play here of Xavier O'Halloran, a really hard-working winger slash midfielder type, inside-outside kind of mid. I really do rate him. Pick 22, a nice selection there. Bobby Hill did slide a bit, but there were really a few plays that Newham internally knew that this guy could be a really good player. Did go across to Collingwood, now a premiership player, so a bit of a pain for Giants supporters. And then look at these 2 selections here, or even these 3 selections here. This is what I love. Kieran Briggs, the academy product from the Giants at pick 34. What a breakout season he had. Now the #1 ruck for the Giants. Just so aggressive in the air, and just such a competitive beast when going up in the ruck. Connor Idun, massive breakout season. I think he can again go to the next level next year. So reliable in their back half, one of the more underrated players in the competition. And Callum Brown, the Irishman, he had a nice breakout year too, as sort of that swingman. He started defence, but found his home across the forward line for the Giants this year. Now, I'd love to give GWS an A grade. I feel like they almost could, but again, Briggs, Idun, Callum Brown, at the moment of recording this video, they're not like the top tier, top echelon sort of plays, even though they have the potential to definitely go to the next level. So I'll be giving the Giants a solid B+. Really love this crop that they did get in 2018. Hawthorn were pretty much in the same boat as Essendon from this 2018 draft. Not really much draft capital. They did give up, I think it was their first, second, and a pick in the 30s as well. It was something like that for Chad Wingard, which pretty much now when we look at it, hasn't really aged too well. So yeah, with the limited selections they did have here, they did pick up Jacob 𝐓𝐴𝐴𝐴𝐴, almost played 50 games for the Hawks, but now across to the Tigers in this latest trade period. Tim Moore is also another notable player from this list. That is a former player now for the Hawks. Couldn't play a game for them, picked up in the rookie draft, but was, of course, a key defender of the Giants' inaugural season. But just when you think it's looking like one of the worst draft crops we've seen so far in this video, look at that. In the preseason supplementary selection period, they did pick up Ned Reeves, who now, 5 years later, is their #1 ruckman with 38 games and counting. So because of that, I don't think I can give the Hawks a D grade here. It's a good pickup they did find from this 2018 draft, so I'm going to be giving the Hawks a C-. The Ds were very active in this 2018 draft. They had a total of 10 selections, the highest out of any club, so a bit to go over here, but the first 2 selections, pretty notable. Tom Sparrow, James Jordan, Sparrow the big one, a premiership player. James Jordan unlucky not to get that premiership medallion. He was the sub, of course, in that grand final, but 2 very serviceable players. Jordan now across to the Swans, but Sparrow, a player that I rate. I think he's going to be an important part of their midfield group for the next 5 years or so. When I was doing these graphics, Marty Hall was not on the Melbourne list, but then I saw on Twitter, literally after I was doing these graphics, that he has now been picked up again by the Demons, so he is back on the list as that general defender type. Did have his injury troubles, but yeah, was consistent throughout the VFL. I'm pretty sure for Williamstown, so yeah, not a bad pickup. Could be sort of like that, playing that sort of 𝐼𝐼𝐿𝐼𝐵𝐵 type of role. And then when moving down the list, Toby Bedford. Great pickup for the Giants, but when we look at it from a Demons perspective, wasn't really able to do too much, but they were able to pick up another good small forward in their benefit of Cade Chandler. Had a really good 2023 season, was constantly playing as the sub, but really broke out for the D's this year as a reliable, good kick for goal, this guy. And then the rest of those selections contain no other players on the list. Corey Wagner, one to note, of course, now playing for the Fremantle Dockers. So, yeah, overall, not a bad crop here from Melbourne. I'm going to be giving them a C+. I love the Sparrow pickup and Cade Chandler in the rookie draft. I really like as well. So C+ for the Demons. We move on now to North Melbourne, and their first three selections right off the bat are selections that really catch our eyes, given that these three players are the only players left on the North Melbourne list today. That being Tarryn Thomas, Curtis Taylor and Bailey Scott. Thomas, yes, he's had his issues on and off the field, looking like he could have been maybe potentially delisted, but how about his second half of the season for the Kangas in 2023? Looked really promising, so I'm keen to see how he'll go, how he'll bounce back. Will he have a great preseason and really go bang from round one onwards? He's one to really watch out for on the half-forward line. Curtis Taylor as well, and Bailey Scott. Bailey Scott, the father-son, of course, but yeah, Curtis Taylor, these are two players that are still on the list and have been pretty serviceable for the Kangaroos really the last 5 years. Both really projecting towards 100 games, and then yeah, the rest of the selections containing no plays on the list. A few notable ones: the Irishman Murphy wanted to go back home, and then yeah, Tom Campbell now playing for the Saints. So I'll be giving North Melbourne a solid B grade here. Quite simple. Their first three selections containing 3 best 22 plays 5 years on. You really can't get better than that. Also considering Taylor and Scott were absolute bargain buys at 46 and 49. And Tarryn Thomas as well. Still think he has plenty of fuel in the tank. One to definitely keep an eye on next year. So B grade for the Kangaroos. We now move on to Port Adelaide, and I don't really need to talk about this one too much. Just those first two selections say it right there. 2 cornerstone plays for the Port Adelaide franchise. Connor Rozee and Zach Butters have turned out to be absolutely sensational pickups. Rozee, the South Australian pick 5, and Zach Butters, the tough as nails type of midfielder at pick 12. And these two are just like 2 peas in a pod. Zach Butters is one that's really grown, definitely in 2023. If you were probably grading this last year, you'd probably give it maybe an A or definitely B+, but Butters is one that's now definitely given this an A+ for Port Adelaide, the Coaches Association Player of the Year award. Of course, let's not leave out Rozee too. He's been All-Australian the last 2 seasons in a row now. Xavier Dursum as well was another exciting looking one for Port Adelaide, but now across to the Essendon Bombers he does go. Boyd Woodcock as well, now delisted, but he's had a few nice stints for the Southport Sharks, especially last year. And Martin Frederick as well, had a few nice games with Port Adelaide, but did get delisted. But reviewing at it, it's just the main 2. Rozee and Butters is all you got to look at really from Port Adelaide's draft pool. 2 sensational pickups, and definitely a big part in Port Adelaide's premiership chances the next few years or so. Next team up is the Richmond Tigers. With their first selection, they did pick up Riley Collier-Dawkins, the highly rated midfielder from the Oakleigh Chargers. This was a player that Richmond fans really hyped up to be the next big thing, but just was never really it in the end at AFL level. He was a player that showed great ability to burst from stoppages and very good in and under, but just couldn't really show it at the top grade, and did eventually get delisted, pretty sure, at the end of last year. Pick 43 though, great pick up here at a pretty low selection. Jack Ross, now a part of their midfield group for the Tigers, 63 games and counting, and this is the only player that is still on the Tigers list. But a few later selections here. Jake Aarts didn't really end well for the Tigers, with missing that absolute sitter in their loss to North Melbourne, but hey, played 42 games, sorry. Mabior Chol as well did get downgraded onto the rookie lists, obviously playing a few seasons before 2018 for the Tigers. And Sydney Stack as well in the pre-season supplementary selection period. Eventually didn't age too well, but had a few decent games and showed a few glimpses as that highly talented player, but did have his issues off the field and in the end not good enough. So with only one player left on the list, I just have to give Richmond a D grade here, but I am going to be giving them a plus just because I think Jack Ross at that pick has turned out to be a pretty good best 22 play for the Tigers, and also with their selections outside the national draft, there were a few serviceable players in the end, so D plus it is for the Tigers. For the next club now, we have the St Kilda Football Club. Right away at pick 4, they did take Max King. Really exciting selection at the time here for the Saints fans, that successor to Riewoldt, and he's been a little bit on and off throughout his career when we look at it 5 years down the track. It's still definitely going to be a great player, but he's had his injury problems, a few long-term injuries, but did kick over 50 goals in 2022, and he had a really good season when he did come back from injury earlier in 2023. Jack Bytel, pick 41, just really couldn't get enough game time for the Saints and eventually delisted as that inside midfielder. Matthew Parker as well, a few games from him, but then eventually get moved across to Richmond. Nick Hind as well, a few games from him at the Saints too, but has shown his better colours and his better form at the Dons via trade. But when we do look at it, where I think is the big point of difference for the Saints with this draft crop 5 years on, Callum 𝐼𝐿𝐼 in the rookie draft. The last 2 seasons, he's really come across as one of the premier key defenders of the competition. All-Australian squad last year, and now he's made an All-Australian Blazer from 2023 in one of the top defences of 2023. So for the grade I'll be giving the Saints, it's probably a little bit of a lenient one, but I just really like it. I'm going to be giving them an A grade simply because they've been able to pick up their number 1 key forward and number 1 key defender from the same draft. And 𝐼𝐿𝐼, when we look at it now 5 years on, is one of not only the biggest draft steals from 2018, but one of the biggest draft steals from maybe now the last decade onwards. He's turned out to be a fantastic player, a rookie draft bargain pickup, and yeah, Max King still, I think, has untapped potential as well. So yeah, really like this draft here for the Saints. 2 quality players they were able to pick up. Now we'll move on to the Sydney Swans. Their first few selections do really catch your eye here. Nick Blakey, James Rowbottom, and Justin McInerney. The Lees picked up at pick 10, had a massive breakout season in 2023 on the All-Australian squad, and has really found his home as that sort of third tall or accountable defender that can really punish teams when cutting it up through the middle of the park. James Rowbottom's become a really important player for the Swans at pick 25. He was picked up at the last few years. He's been in the top 5 for the Swans best and fairest, and also he did break the Swans tackling record in 2023 as well, as a bit of a fun fact. Justin McInerney as well, another important best 22 type of play for the Swans, shows his swagger along the wings and at half back, loves to take the game on. Zach Foot at pick 51, no longer on the list, but I always thought he was a bit of a talented player. Probably COVID was a big reason why he did get delisted, just because of the list changes and all that. But when we look at the bottom 2 selections here that really bolster the Swans draft crop 5 years on, Sam Wicks and Hayden McLean, the academy boy of Sam Wicks as the category B rookie. He's had some nice games the last 3 seasons or so for the Swans now as that pressure small forward, and Hayden McLean was one of the most improved players for Sydney in 2023. Very good marking ability and a reliable set shot. So yeah, it's an A grade for the Swans. Not only were the first 3 selections very good, but we tend to forget the later selections. Wicks and McLean were also bargain pickups as well. But yeah, Rowbottom, McInerney, 2 great pickups, and Nick Blakey was the obvious one as that father-son and also academy selection pickup. We now have the West Coast Eagles draft to look at here. Pick 28, Xavier O'Neill. He did get delisted at the end of the 2023 AFL season. Same with Luke Foley too, so they have swung the axe with a few list changes at the end of 2023. But yeah, 2 plays that were okay for the Eagles, but never really showed their max potential. Bailey Williams has been a bit more of that slow burn kind of type of player. He's had a few poor games, but his 2023 season was very impressive. He really upped his game, and I think he's from what people are saying, he's going to be trialled as a bit of a more of a forward next year. So watch out for him in the future. Harry Edwards, key defender, they were able to pick up in the rookie draft, still on the list. So still, I guess, a successful pickup given it is the rookie draft. And a few category Bs there that are no longer on the list moving down. So I'm going to be giving the Eagles a C- here. Probably, maybe, potentially reaching into the D grade category. But I think the big point of difference from the Eagles in retrospect from this draft is definitely Bailey Williams. Really improved this year and turning out to be a quite decent selection at 35, and Harry Edwards still on the list as a rookie selection key defender. For the final team now, the Western Bulldogs. Back in 2018, they were boasting one of the highest rated draft hauls out of any club because they were able to pick up Bailey Smith, a very highly rated midfielder, and also Riley West. They're able to pick him up on a very, very good, bit of a steal really, a pick 26 at the time. Now, Bailey Smith has been the biggest influence, of course, for their draft haul. He's been a little bit on and off the past few seasons. If you're doing this grading at the end of 2021, where Bailey Smith was looking like one of the best young players in the competition, you'd still probably give them an A grade, but he's dropped off a little bit with off-the-field issues and just a lack of form, really, the past 2 years now. So he's a little bit of a question mark now heading into next year. Riley West as well, obviously still on the list, a highly rated player in his draft here as well, but he's just unable to really show his full potential, I think, for the Bulldogs. A bit of a mid-forward. He's been able to show a few nice games as that pressure forward, but still could give a little bit more heading into next year. Vandermeer as well, a bit of a swingman, can play forward and defence, a nice depth pickup in retrospect now at pick 37 for the Bulldogs. And also, when you do look down the bottom, 𝐓𝐴 𝐼𝐿𝐼 is a Category B rookie, still on the list as well. He's been able to play the last 2 years or so, a few nice games in the ones for the Bulldogs as that swingman type. So, yeah, for the Doggies, I'm going to be giving them a C+. There's still a lot of questions on Bailey Smith. He's just the biggest influential point from this draft haul. But hey, Riley West, Vandermeer, not bad pickups outside the first round onwards. And yeah, 𝐓𝐴 𝐼𝐿𝐼 as well, still on the list as a Category B rookie at the time. And as well, Jordan Sweet was another one to look at too. He had a few nice games in the VFL, but not really much at AFL level. He goes across to Port Adelaide now. So C+ for the Bulldogs. So everyone, there is every AFL team's draft crop rated 5 years on from the 2018 draft. As we can see, Port Adelaide at A+ with Butters and Rosie, and then moving all the way down to the likes of Brisbane and Essendon, plays they picked up at the time who were well rated, but now 5 years on, no longer on their list. So as I said earlier in this video, I thought this would have been a really fun sort of exercise to do, because we always like to grade and review drafts right after they happen, but a bit of a more of a retrospective type, seeing how things have panned out in the last 5 years or so. So make sure to comment down below and let me know what you did think of my gradings. These are gradings that can definitely chop and change from year to year. You don't have to grade a draft only 5 years onwards, but I just feel like 5 years is a good point to review a draft, because 5 years is definitely more than enough time for players to show what they are worth. So if you did go on to enjoy today's video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. That would be heavily appreciated. Again, with the off season, not really too much content flying through the door, but I do like to keep it casual and at least somewhat active. So a video maybe once or twice a week is something I'll definitely be doing over the span of the next few months. So hopefully you did enjoy this sort of format, everyone. A bit of a different one, but I did enjoy it. But yeah, apart from that, everyone, I will talk to you later. See you later, fellas.